What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations. I'm the host of Epic Conversations, 2020 Best Podcast News Award winner, and 2018 Innovation Award winner given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. And I am the host of the only online show in the world for dads and fathers that's sponsored by Dove Men Care. It's also co-sponsored by Dad Central, Canada's national fatherhood organization. And one more thing. I am the board chair for the Global Food and Drink Initiative. It is a multimedia, not-for-profit, featuring Blacks in the diaspora that are doing their thing in food, wine, and travel. But it's none of that tonight. It's Saturday night. It's a little bit after 9 p.m. Eastern time. The sun is just starting to go down where I am in Toronto. Beautiful day and had some beautiful weather this week. Let's forget about the weather, forget about that, all those other things, because we're here for two ladies. That's why we are here. We're here for Aisha K. Staggers and Jill Jones. It's Staggers State of Things with both of them. Ladies, what is going on?
Well, good evening, everybody.
If you follow Jill on Instagram, you know that she's a tennis maven. So
trying. I love it.
I was loving the shots. Did you saw with her forehead? I love the shots in the butt. I'm going, okay.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Yeah, I'm just out there trying to get back in shape.
Oh, Barty, look out. Barty, look out. And good evening. Jen Myers is already here. Good evening. Dr. Vibe is your hope. Also looking for it. Yes, thank you, Jen. Thank you for coming on and supporting. It's appreciated and not taken for granted. Aisha, what's going on in your world?
Not much. Just kind of trying to wade my way through the news cycle and everything else. And it's just kind of,
And I thought this was going to be a quiet weekend. Before our conversation tonight, we said we could just spend an hour or two on just one or two of these conversation subjects tonight. And also, Chris, hey, Chris goes, happy weekend, Dr. Vibe, Asian Jill. You're really working that tennis racket, Jill. You see that?
Yeah.
I'm telling you. That is hilarious. So, ladies, it has been an incredible week, not only in the United States, but also internationally with things that are going on. And let's start off with your thoughts on the Israel and Gaza conflict.
Well, I'm not really pleased about it. It's just another form of oppression. And I know I'm not really picking the popular side here, because many people speak privately about what's going on with the Palestinians, but they're really afraid to speak out publicly about it, about how they find it pretty horrible and horrifying. And so people just talk in the background amongst each other, because no one wants the agita that usually comes with saying anything bad against Israel. But how this really jumped off is so crazy. I mean, it's not only the fact that Israel has had these people under, they've been occupied for, I don't know, God knows how long, since the 60s. The settlers, moving and encroaching upon different parts of the land, that's a recipe for disaster. But what this tipping point was, which many people probably gets lost in the of everything else. It was like in April, and I think it was Israel's Memorial Day and the first day of Ramadan for the Palestinians. And the Israeli president was trying to give a speech in Jerusalem, and he didn't want the speakers from the mosque to drown out his speech. So he had the military go and cut the cables. So, I mean, you poke the bear. It's like, what are you doing? I think it's rude. It was inappropriate. And it for already a very tense situation. And it was petty. Really petty. And I don't know if I even believe that story, because I think that also anytime the courts seem to be getting the hairs of Netanyahu and had taken his behind to jail and trial, basically, there's always some kind of ruckus that happens and breaks out. It's like a really big distraction, and Netanyahu uses it for his to hide, because he's a crook and he's a criminal and he's a horrible human being. And there's nothing good that you could say. He just tries to prolong, the devil, basically, from getting him. I mean, it's really sad to me today. What I don't think, after witnessing Black Lives Matter and really, really dealing with the oppression that we've been dealing with, looking at historically, I think this has been a moment where the blinders are coming off of everybody to realize what I've been taught has been not real, and it hasn't been entirely the whole truth. So if we look at that, even no one wants to look at something that's like genocide or just genocide. We watched a tape of George Floyd die, so I know what I'm watching when I see people's phones. And but Israel has the power to cut off their cell towers, to cut off everything. And today they destroyed the building that houses Al Jazeera and the AP. These are our journalists. These are our media, that they may not respect what they say or what they're trying to impart to the world, but that was a punk move. And then they tried to cover it up by saying, well, Hamas is in that building too. Well, my point is, if you're trying to kill Hamas, and then you go out and you've already said, we gave everybody evacuation measures and we gave them time to evacuate. So you gave Hamas time to evacuate too? I mean, it makes no sense. Sorry, but it makes no sense. And really, so no wonder y'all can't, fine, you given evacuation measures to people in the building with Hamas. It's like, really, that's great, and that was real decent of you. However, you also probably inadvertently gave it to Hamas, right? It just sounds stupid. They don't even sound military-like. That just sounds ridiculous. So they blew up the building, all of their equipment, everything. So, but here's the real kickback here, you guys. It's not going to change how people are feeling. We've been hearing about this for a very long time, and the sentiment is not anti-Semitic. It's just anti-genocide. Let the people have their land. I had a friend who went to do some music with children in Israel, and in Palestine. And if I saw one more video of him walking through a checkpoint and gates and fences in a town, it was like going 5 miles down, and then you have like this barbed wire, and all to go teach music. So I'm sorry, disgusting, and I can't defend any of it, and they should be ashamed of themselves. And grown-ass men can't find any way. People are like, well, the people are with Hamas, and that's a terror group. They allowed that. You sometimes, when your captors are protecting you, essentially, who else? Israel's not their friend, so where are they going to go? Who is on their side? And it may not be the best. It may not be the best bear, but we've seen that in freaking Disney shows, movies of the people who were living with the beast because he took care of them. I mean, hell, it's ridiculous. So, they created it, and they slowly but surely are, trying to kill people slowly. A whole bunch of people will never be able to dream, never leave Palestine, and never leave the radius of it. To me, that's torture. That's just torture. And my heart breaks just because I just think it's really just up that it's still going on.
Aisha?
I think because of the moment that we're in, at least in this country, and in what the rest of the world has seen, I think people's tolerance for both has kind of, reached its limit. When people are looking at the situation, like Jill said, people would talk in fear before when you would discuss Israeli-Palestinian relations. And now I think I've seen at least more people kind of come out and say, okay, what's going on is not Right, because there was always this overwhelming fear of being called anti-Semitic if you spoke out in any way against Israel. But the bottom line is that what they're doing is not right. It's not, it's, if you look at even just what Jill said today about the bombing of this building where the AP and Al Jazeera was, you got to remember too, they leveled a complete housing unit. It was also a housing unit for many people in that area, innocent people. So now you have all of these innocent people being attacked, having their living spaces attacked, having their security attacked. And Israel justifies it by saying, oh, we're going after Hamas, but they've been bombing and haven't hurt anyone in Hamas yet. Just the people who actually are, who live in that region, who have no ball in this game except for self-preservation. And that is something that I think the more we call it out as people, the more we get our government to call it out, because that's the other challenge too, is that our government then says, oh, we're going to stand with Israel. Well, even if they're wrong, just because we have an ally in a region doesn't mean we support them when they're wrong. We have to be able to tell our allies when they're wrong, or else you're not being a good ally. I mean, essentially. So I mean, for example, they have no problem telling us that what's going on in our current police state is wrong. They have no problem doing that. So
True.
they also need to be able to be willing to accept it when we tell them that this is wrong and it needs to stop. I think of the degree of oppression. You got to remember too, there are generations of children who are watching this in that area, and just that degree of oppression. And when you go back in history, to look at, first of all, it's over a very small strip of land, and you have there were the Jews who came from Europe after World War II who were resettling in the area. So you look at how Israel became the kind of state it is now compared to how people were living before. And it's kind of like what happened here when European settlers came over and took the land from the Native Americans because they were trying to flee something. And it's we've just got to do better about calling it out and not being afraid to call it out. And anyone who is quick to say, oh, you're being anti-Semitic for calling this out, you have to ask them, why are you being anti-Muslim?
Exactly.
That's the other question. That's the other part of it.
And also, we have to remember that, a lot of people are very ignorant about some of what's going on. And I wouldn't claim that I know absolutely everything. But I mean, there were people online who don't even know that there are like African Palestinian people and actually in that region where they're actually hitting. It's a lot of descendants from the African Palestinian region. And, as far Israel per se as a country was all in bed with Donald Trump. So I'm sorry, I personally have my druthers about their government. And who they decide to say they're an ally to, because they should really be more concerned who wants to be an ally to them, because what they're doing, oppressed people do not get favor just because you're oppressed while you're oppressing somebody else. Go to hell. It's absolutely repugnant and it's hypocritical. And, there are people who lived on that land before they settled there that had vineyards and vineyards of olives and things that belonged to them. And they came and they took it. I mean, we were experiencing just a tad of that. We see it with the pipeline. We see things. And it's amazing that people just have no problem watching people. We're watching this on live stream right now. We're watching people take people's property, take their belongings, and take their lives. It's all being filmed. And you cannot tell me what I'm seeing. I don't care if you get rid of a building with the media in it. I know in my heart of heart, it was a punk move. There are tons of Israelis who are ex-veterans from the military there who totally are not in agreement with what the IDF is doing. And they have spoken out about it. They need to talk to their people, their constituents, because there are a great many Israeli people who actually do not agree with this either. So I'm tired of governments not listening to their people.
And I mean, the other part of it too is that wasn't Netanyahu supposed to be out by now?
He was, but every time he gets going to trial, he creates some bullshit. And this is what he does. You know, it makes me think, did any country ever have a law? Well, maybe that was the reason, you know, Brutus went and did what he did to Julius Caesar, because he knew, hell, they'll be sitting up in that freaking circle all damn day trying to figure out what to do with him. Maybe that's the way it had to be done, or has had to be, sadly. But because our laws and everybody's laws clearly don't work. I guess Hitler did everybody a favor killing himself, but I don't know why he even bothered, because frankly, I don't know what would have happened. I mean, he'd probably still be with his attorneys, because to me, attorneys these days are the equivalent of scum. I think that they lie. I wouldn't, you know, my daughter dated, I was like, that's another one. Attorneys lie. They are liars. And they are taught to lie. They're trained to look at things in a very different way. They're nice friends to have. But the fact that you know somebody who can sit there and be creative with a lie and clever, that's not something to brag about.
So let me just take a time out, just because there's a pile of comments, and I know people are making on. I'm gonna get to them in just a moment. But both Jill and Aisha were talking about the bombing of the building today, which was just like, wow. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna try to the best of my ability. For those who haven't seen this clip, we're gonna play it right now, and I'll play it for everyone. This is the bombing of a building that housed Al Jazeera. And also,
the Associated Press. The Associated Press.
So this is a 50-second clip. Let's see if we can. Here we go.
This is the moment an Israeli missile strike destroyed a high-rise building housing the Associated Press, Al Jazeera, and other office spaces and homes in Gaza on Saturday.
What?
The owner of the building and journalists here are pleading on the phone with an Israeli intelligence officer who warned them the attack was coming and to evacuate. Al Jazeera's correspondent Wael Al-Dadou reporting that they didn't have time to grab their equipment. Israel says the building housed assets belonging to Hamas's military intelligence, the latest of many such attacks that Israeli forces say are a response to the thousands of Hamas rockets fired toward Israel in the last few days.
Okay. So
I mean, people have homes, they have pets, they have children. And imagine what they've lost. Imagine, you know, imagine living like that. And they're worried that Hamas is sending rockets. You need to ask yourself why somebody's coming for you. I mean, and been coming for you since the 60s. I'm sorry, they keep encroaching on it. They can't make a compromise. I don't know, but the fact that it's U.S. weapons killing people, like our weapons were killing people in Yemen, we are paying for it with our tax dollars. So essentially, me and Aisha are responsible for those children who died. We're responsible. We helped pay for those bullets. We helped pay for those bombs. And I don't like it.
Okay.
Yeah, and you know, the people who are caught in the middle of the fighting, the Palestinian people, they just want to live. I mean, this war, and that's what you have to call it. This war is going on around them, and they have no control. They're not on the side of Hamas. They're not on the side of Israel. They're just collateral damage.
Okay.
Exactly.
So let's take a break here and catch up with some messages. So we already got Jen. So we're going to go to Chris says, the saddest thing to me, the loss of civilian life, which includes 40 innocent children so far. Black Beauty is saying, kudos to Jill for being fair-minded and brave enough to give the other side of the story regarding Israel. Most Americans, because of our culture and upbringing, never speak against anything Israel does. Chris goes back and says, Jill, Israel gave the people of the facility 1 hour to evacuate. WHT, exclamation point, question marks.
Horrible.
Wow. Black Beauty, equal props to Aisha for this knowledge as well. Again, most Americans never look at the other side regarding Israel. And T. Stevens, excellent points, Jill, Aisha. Any more points? I just wanted to make sure we had to catch up on all the comments. Any more points? I want to know, why is this still going on? How come there is not a settlement? Like, this has been going on since 1967.
Well,
before that,
you in the Sheikh Jarrah area where there have been some sit-in protests of about 13 families trying to claim their lands, and they fought back. These 13 or 17 families have been fighting since that time to get their vineyards back, to get their things. I mean, you've got families that came in, took the vineyards and sell it on the mass market, world market for your olive oil, and they're millionaires. And these Palestinians, who it was their land, are being railroaded in courts. They cannot have it. So there also had been some sit-ins going on, quiet protests. And, then they have like young children coming up who go out and, try to use their thing and throw rocks at the Israelis and things that, your teenagers would do. We have it here with our African-American teenagers. Kids do whatever they're doing, but is that worth going in and leveling a whole community because some kid threw a rock at or whatever? I mean, these people, first of all, the way they've been funneling in and out, like keeping this military thing going, it's kind of disgusting that that they have to, it's mandatory to serve. But look, most other countries, France doesn't make a mandatory, you have to go to the military anymore, and neither does Germany, neither do many of the other European countries, because they were getting in the mindset years ago, like we're evolving. We don't have to fight things that way, but not Israel. You can count on them giving a real dog and pony show like you're in the freaking like biblical days. Give up the land. They don't follow their religion. They don't follow it. I mean, the other day I was dealing with a friend of mine who had a court date, and the attorney was moaning about the dates we were selecting, and he had to be available for some day. And he was like, it's a Jewish holiday. I was like, okay, cool. But when we said, oh, well, it's African, it's the African-American holiday of such and such, we were given no fairness, none. But for Agriculture Day of barley and wheat, he got his day to not have the appointment or have his client in our meeting. So it's not fair, because you try it here and say, well, this was when our state for the African Americans, and this is our holiday. You don't get the same fairness. So I'm about sick of that. I am sick of it. And I really wish everybody would stop bowing down to this. I really do, because they're killing people, and it's genocide. There is no other way to say it. It's genocide, genocide, genocide. That's the point. And we're allowing it.
And there can't be compromise when both sides aren't willing to compromise. You have one side is not willing to give up its parcel of land or even share it, okay? And the other side's like, well, we're being oppressed. We're willing to work on a compromise. And the other side is saying, well, we'll compromise on our terms only, which means you give up what we want, and then we'll leave you alone. And that's no compromise at all.
And here's the craziest thing of all that we should all think spiritually tonight before we go to bed. We should all sit and go, why was I born where I was born? Because God forbid you were ever born in Palestine, because that would be your life. And your children's lives and their children's lives. So you tell me, What did anybody do to deserve that? And take God out of the equation on a certain level. Just as human beings, like, why can't we want the best for each other? And why can't we admit our own personal wrongdoings? Because that's how compromise actually works, is when people admit their guilt about something, then you work on the amending. It's when you have confessions with each other about the wrongdoing you've done. It's in relationships, it's in friendships. The only way compromises ever work when two people can look at their wrongs, admit them, and then try to find a way to move forward together. But you can't do it. You can't move forward if you're not willing to go, yeah.
Aisha, anything else you want to add?
No, I think that's pretty much it on that topic, because we're not going to see any kind of conflict. We're going to see many more casualties before this is over, of innocent people. And by the time it's all said and done, they'll probably have cleared out maybe 4 Hamas people and say, oh, look, it was worth it.
Yeah.
Okay. Comment to your Black Beauty. I'm also a veteran of the United States Army and have been brainwashed into believing that Israel is righteous and the other side were all terrorists. Never even thought of this as barbaric. Black Beauty says again, also, most Christian churches, including my church, sends large portions of money to Israel monthly to fight the Palestinians successfully.
They do. That's true. Nonprofits. There's about 8 or 9 that Haaretz has a whole article on, showing all of these nonprofits and how much money they get to fight those court cases, to do all of that. These people are showing up with nothing. You know, it's like having a public defender against some of the biggest real estate attorneys in the world.
And in our country, you have to remember too that while this is happening, it's also another reach of white supremacy and extending it across the world. Because if they would never send the money to Palestinians to help them support themselves and protect themselves from being attacked by Israel. They're supporting the side that's trying to wipe out Palestinians.
The Kahans, the Kahanists, so I don't know their names.
Yeah.
It is a very specific fringe within the Jewish community. The Kahanists, I wish I knew the full name, but they are the equivalent of like white supremacists. So like I'm saying, most Israelis are like cool with they're like, yeah, let's just clear this whole mess up, right? They don't like it either. But how it's been portrayed is very different when it's just a core. They have equal groups of like Donald Trump. It's that's how this is. And that's who keeps the money flowing and churning and the dirty deeds going on.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're not even, the most important part is they're not even using their own money to fight this. They're taking donations from everywhere else to do it.
Okay. We got that one flushed out, and it's only going to get more fun as we go along, folks. So hold on to your horses. Next up, well, I don't live in America, but when I heard this week that the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, said vaccinated people can ditch their masks in most settings. Isn't that good news, ladies?
They should have kept this to themselves because, so, I mean, how do we know who's vaccinated and who's not? This allows the people who are not vaccinated to feel very comfortable going out without masks and just being able to say they're vaccinated, because guess what? No one's going to check for their vaccination card because people are like, oh, that's an infringement upon my privacy, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we're going to see, regardless, the unintended consequence is going to be an uptick in cases, particularly in areas where you have very low percentages of people getting vaccinated. For example, I was looking at a map earlier this week of all the states that have used at least, have used different percentages of the vaccine that they've been given by the federal government. And the Northeast, we're like past 50%. Same thing with California. But you go to the southern states and they're all under like 20%. And so these are the places where you're going to see people saying, well, the CDC says, and yeah, I'm vaccinated, sure, I'm vaccinated, and you're going to see these upticks. And all of those are run by Republican governors. So I think it's yet another cog in the wheel of this whole pandemic. Has the CDC always gotten it right? Well, no. And I think that right now they'll say this is okay for people who are vaccinated, but the unintended consequence is going to be that people who are not vaccinated are going to be mixing in with people who are vaccinated, and the spread is going to it's gonna go wild, particularly among those people. And even though the vaccine is supposed to minimize the effect of you getting COVID, it's not supposed to prevent you from getting it, period. So you might see more cases where you'll have people getting COVID, but they won't have severe cases that put them on ventilators and things like that.
Jill?
I mean, I was reading an article. There's like 700 epidemiologists who really had wanted America to stay with mask use for another year. They're not 100% on board with what the CDC is touting right now, just for the simple fact of what Aisha mentioned, but also for the other factor that we are only protected against the first variant. We are not protected against all of the new variants. And those new variants are still coming, and they're not quite sure what that means. We do know that they're feverishly trying to keep up with these mutations and to create boosters. And yes, we're probably in a better position than people who are not vaccinated. However, that's a concern. I personally will still be wearing a mask and keeping my distance from many people. That being said, the society that we live in, with governors trying to, the red states, get rid of unemployment for people, which therefore is going to force people back to jobs where they're completely exposed to these errant, crazy, lame brains out there who want to flex their whatever. That it puts them at risk again to have to deal with that, just purely on a financial level. It's like, oh my God, a rich company falls and everybody's like bending down to give them thousands and gazillions of dollars. But gee, don't be a poor person and fall on hard times here. These nasty governors from the Republican states, and I hope they all burn in hell, because they are despicable. They are the most disgusting creatures. And if I worked in a restaurant, I'd shit in all their fucking food.
Okay. Don't tell us how you feel.
I hate them.
The part that is,
oh boy. And it's only gonna get, we haven't really started talking about Republicans tonight, Jill. So
no. I don't think anyone will hire me for a restaurant job.
well, you know your dream job is still
baking.
No, well, it's either baking or press secretary, so it's one of the two.
Oh yeah, Jen, and she's leaving, so maybe I should just try to see if if President Biden will let me do it, just at least for a week, to just get them all messed up.
Get that happen.
They would be, that group of reporters would be in check by the time I got finished with them.
Aisha.
Well, here's the thing. It's so telling about how willing people were ready to run to the, oh my gosh, the masks are off, that the corporations where these people work, barely making minimum wage, particularly in these red states, same corporations saying that, oh, people don't want to work. they're justifying everything else. They don't want to work because they have to wear masks for 8 hours. They don't want to work because, they make more on unemployment, rather than saying, no, they don't want to work because we pay god awful wages that they cannot live on. All these corporations were so quick to be like, oh, no more masks in our stores, like Walmart and some of these other places. Places like Walmart are breeding grounds for COVID. Have you seen the people that go in there? Okay, some of these videos, that you see, these pictures of people that go in Walmart, they are not the cleanest people. These are people who are going to get sick or make somebody else sick. And you got to remember too, we still haven't vaccinated fully people who are under 15. So even if you are a vaccinated adult, your children are still vulnerable when you go out to the grocery store or to run this errand or this errand. So to say the masks need to come off is just really bad. I'm thankful. I was saying this to someone online, that I'm thankful that we still have our state law intact that keeps mask wearing required in public spaces, because I think that's the only thing that's going to save a lot of our states from having that extreme uptick, is to have that law in place. So it's required when we go into a store. So even though Walmart might want someplace, to say, oh, you don't have to wear masks in our stores, they can't say that in this state.
Okay.
Walmart, the store of butt crack fumes. I can't stand that place. I never have really cared for Walmart.
Oh my goodness. Okay, we got to take a time out because I think tonight may set the record.
I've never been a shopper for Walmart. If I'm desperate, I'll go, but no.
Tonight may set the record for the number of comments made in a live, especially in the first 35 minutes. This is a record, so I have to time out to catch everybody up because the comments are flying here. So
have you ever seen the people in Walmart dress, those pictures of people that go out in the bikini?
And that's what I'm talking about.
And their stained underwear that are showing.
That's it. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Okay, time out. So let's catch up here. Chris is going, Aisha, bingo. Chris is saying, I will continue to mask up, and that includes when I return to my office after Labor Day. I am not taking chances with those who opt not to get vaccinated. Cinnamon Canela says,
for Chris, if Governor Lamont if he's smart and he wants to stay in office, he'll leave that mandate in place so you won't have to unmask at your office.
All right. Cinnamon Canela, good evening, guys. Welcome to you. Jen saying, this is already causing so many questions even at work. I'm vaccinated and I do not want someone who is not up in my face without a mask. Aisha is right about people who will pretend they got the shots. Cinema Canela saying, yes, the mask regulation lifted way too soon. Jen is saying, agreed, Jill. I'll still be wearing my mask also. Christina's going LMFAO because I know who she's LMFAOing at or with. Cinema saying, I'll be wearing my mask regardless of what CNT and DeSantis said. T. Stevens is getting fairly entertained tonight. Black Beauty, I love you guys. LMAO is just Chris is saying in this area, Yale can do it. They have told all employees and students no vaccine, you are not returning. Working in private sector, we cannot do that.
True.
Yeah, Yale has to do that because Yale pretty much owns the state of Connecticut. They definitely own my hometown. Where Yale is situated. They own all of that area. So they will be able to dictate to the governor what will and will not be done.
Cinema Canela sides with Jill. I'm good. The same, Jill. Walmart is my last resort.
Mine too. Yeah.
Black Beauty in Ohio, governor doing this, having $1 million drawing for people to get vaccinated. And these folks still aren't getting not vaccinated. Sad, just sad. He's saying,
I saw that.
I guess they figure the odds are so high because they're giving it away to 5 people.
Yes, I mean they're stubborn.
I still try to become one of those 5 people.
I know. Why not?
People play Powerball to even higher odds when it's like $840 million.
Thank you.
So I mean, your odds are probably a lot smaller
Considering everyone's going to be like, yeah,
right,
no.
and in just one state, right, where Powerball is like across the nation. So you're better off doing that.
So I have a question. When did health become political?
The moment that Hillary Clinton said she was going to work on healthcare, and she wasn't an elected official, she was a woman who came in 1993 when Clinton was elected, and that's when it became political. To the degree it is now, it has always been political because we always decided who would and who wouldn't get healthcare. If you look at the way that hospitals were segregated, Black people couldn't have an obstetrician deliver their babies. They were relying on midwives. And so, and you're talking about in like the Deep South, all of it being segregated. Like Fannie Lou Hamer, for example, she died in a hospital that was in the only Black hospital in her area of Mississippi. And so, right. And so if you didn't live by those regulations and those laws, then you died. So it was always made political, particularly for people of color and the LGBTQ population. Now, what we're seeing is that when Hillary Clinton came in and she wanted to work on healthcare with the resentment and the Republican backlash, it then became a political issue. When the government wanted to get involved, it became a political issue, particularly for Republicans who are all small government, except when it comes to the stuff that they want to put on other people. And that was their whole thing. Small government, big healthcare.
But it was also racist then too, because they didn't want they were like, oh no, you didn't like offer them, insurance too, because they were fine with this. Right. So they made a big deal about it. And yet again, it goes back to the Republican Party just having issues with people of color having certain things that they had. And every time it's like if they're driving, it's like if everybody else drives a Tesla, they're going to want to drive a moon car. They always want to make it where you can't have this. You can't live on my block. How are you affording it? All of it always comes back to them, which is like a bunch of Black people moved in on my block. How much money does he make? Where does he work? What you mean? What? That's what it's all about in America.
Yeah. And the propaganda around healthcare, particularly when it came to offering healthcare coverage to people of color, to immigrants. And what we have to realize is that the more healthcare there is, the healthier the nation will be. The better we are in terms of weathering a pandemic like we're going through now. But with racism and immigration, it's always been like, well, your tax dollars, only yours alone, white America, your tax dollars are paying for these people of color and these immigrants to get healthcare without making the logical leap that, these people also pay taxes too. So they're just getting their fair share out of it. It's the same excuse that when people are like, oh my gosh, people on welfare, all my tax dollars go to pay people on welfare. You know how much you pay that actually goes to people's public assistance? It's like a 25th of 1 penny.
Exactly.
So it's all the propaganda. And so that's how healthcare in this country becomes politicized. People use it against other people in order to gain votes. And then there's racism.
There's another really bizarre thing that when we're dealing with not wearing a mask and what's going on with COVID, a new study came out of England just the other day, and they'd been mentioning it through the whole COVID pandemic, that they were noticing that people who had asthma, COPD, pneumonia-related diseases, people who were using the inhalers, whatever those types are, actually were faring better than people who didn't have them. So if like those those drugs here in America cost $600 and $700, $800 for some of these respiratory drugs. In England, they were giving them to their people when they had COVID. But here, there were so many people who went home alone without an inhaler, without anything. And just the pharmaceutical companies and whatever our deals are with them having us could have saved probably millions or thousands, hundreds of thousands, because many people were, and the same is going on in Brazil or in India. Ship them over some of these inhalers, at least ship them, because these are things breaking every day about it, but they will politicize deaths of people, whether it be from war or from disease. The main goal, it seems, of every country is to figure out how to profit from it.
Yeah, I mean, that was like a couple of years back during the Trump administration. You had that one guy going by the patent for epinephrine pens, and the government would not stop him. And so he took, an average EpiPen costs between $60 to $100. I mean, and they come in packs of 2.
Joe
right?
Manson's daughter was part of that too. Senator Joe Manson's daughter is the CEO of one of those companies who raised the EpiPen.
They raised it to $500, and then all of a sudden you couldn't find any. So they raised the price and dropped the number of EpiPens that were being produced in this country. So here you have this problem. This is a life-saving measure. And I'd go to a pharmacy. I remember I would go to a pharmacy around that time and try to get my EpiPen refilled when I needed it. And they'd be like, we don't have any. We might get some next month. And I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do?
Right.
They're like, go to a hospital. Again, what am I supposed to do? Because there's not enough time to get to a hospital.
Right.
And it was just ridiculous, that to the point that people here were having to go and order through Canada to get EpiPens back then.
Thank God for Canada.
Thank God
it saved a lot of people's lives. It really did. And you can't,
And it's really sad because it's also doing the same thing with people who need insulin and all of that. And you have to wonder, why is it this country, pharmaceutical companies feel that they can screw the people in this country, where they're not doing it in Canada, they're not doing it in Europe, they're not doing it in so many other places. And you wonder, why is this country letting it happen? That's politics. That's
because of our CEOs, how much they get paid, and it's our deals with these companies and our stock market. All of it is related.
Follow the money.
Yeah.
Just follow the money. All right. Chris has a comment here. And now insurance and the out of control deductibles. I am single and my deductible before insurance touches anything is $7,000 a year.
That's crazy. Crazy.
What?
So it's like, why you're damned to have it and damned if you do. Really? Wow.
This is how insurance companies get out of paying for things. So it's like you pay for the insurance, but you still have to pay for your healthcare out of pocket until you meet the deductible. So if you're a regular person who doesn't go to the doctor that often, it doesn't behoove you to have insurance. It's cheaper just to pay out of pocket, because if you're having to pay out of pocket anyway, and giving the example that Chris gave for himself, you're not only having to pay your monthly premium, but you're also having to pay on top of it whatever costs you spend on your medical care. The only reason people think to keep it is on that chance, just in case they happen to need a surgery that's going to cost beyond the $7,000.
Wow.
But it's so interesting because you have like the Affordable Health Care Act, which was, Barack Obama. And yes, I could see why certain people became really annoyed with it, because over the years, what ultimately happened is there were caveats when upon the signing of the ACA, which the Republicans put in at the last minute. They amended things. So that's why there was an increase. And from what I've been told, 2017, there was some real quick jerry-rigging of that. Having it open up, we also saw corporations using the Affordable Care Act platform to service their employees, which was really bizarre because some of that started to constitute where companies would no longer pay for cover a spouse's health insurance. And if they did, then that spouse had to pay the full amount. It was like really like the full price. There was no contribution from either the government, a subsidy, obviously, because you're working, but there was your office would only subsidize your husband or your wife, but not the other spouses. And, it's sort of like they went back into with domestic partnerships, used to have it where before they allowed same-sex marriages, domestic partnerships existed with healthcare, but the partner was never considered a full spouse, but they would just be covered and you'd be paying the full price of the health insurance. So it's been a mess for a very long time. And as my husband says, he doesn't understand how a country that's, he doesn't understand our health insurance at all because it makes absolutely no sense, none. But there's definitely, as you said, follow the money because there's more to it.
Mm-hmm. And then there was also that government, that state loophole that allows states kind of wriggled their way in when it came to the expansion of Medicare and Medicaid, and all of those little things where the states would make up certain laws in terms of how they would administer the Affordable Care Act.
Well, also
and how they would track it and take control of it. So you had these states, like these southern states, for example, again with the red states, particularly in the South. They had the Medicaid expansion. They got funding for it, okay? It wasn't that they had to come up with the money themselves. The federal government, through the ACA, was giving them money to expand Medicaid in their state. And the governors were saying, no, we don't want it.
Exactly. And the worst part of it was people who were independent contractors, like young people, would go, okay, I'll go through the ACA or whatever. But imagine having to report every single month that you made $40,000 or maybe you made $1,000 that month. All of that is fluctuated when the government is subsidizing a percentage of your income for the insurance. So you and knowing how our systems are, like our government systems, could you imagine calling like those offices? They don't have enough employees, but you are supposed to call every time you exceed the amount that they have provided to subsidize. And if you exceed it 1 month over, you're out of the program. And then you've got to go back on the open market and find something else, which they were not opening up the open market. So it's been a real show. And I really believe that legislators have never had conversations with people, and they should make them all go on it, first of all. And they should make them all experience what it's like. Because if you get $1,000 and then you go beyond the limit, can you imagine if you're a musician or whatever, you do a session and you make, or you're an actor, you'd be up and down. But fortunately, actors have better unions that protect them. Musicians don't have great music unions that help them with their health insurance and really secure them. Actors are a little bit better off and people in the film business than musicians, but that's just me.
I mean, I have to say that our state does a very good job in terms of managing its Medicaid and Medicare expansion. It really does.
Okay, I knew I shouldn't have brought out because it's another whole segment itself. But you know what? I'm glad it got out there because it was just on my mind that why is health insurance such a political hotball? And we're talking about people's lives, and it's become political. Just didn't make sense to me. But let's just catch up here. Chris is saying exactly, Aisha, right on the money. Cinema is saying yes, insurance is a ripoff in the USA. So, excuse me. So we're going to move on. And folks, we're not even halfway yet through the topics. So stay on for the ride. It's on going to get better. B-E-T-T-A. Better. It's going to get better. So let's just go to our next conversation topic. And Republicans toss Liz Cheney from that post for her post as third in command in the Republican Party for calling out former President 45 for helping spur the violence on January 6th and his false claims about last November's election. So we talked a little bit about Liz last week. It happened this week. And interesting, in a verbal vote, not an
on record,
closed doors. And
right.
then also another interesting thing. I don't know. She had her first television interview today. I don't know if anyone saw that, but it's quite an interesting interview. It was Savannah Guthrie.
Yeah.
Was a very interesting interview. So first of all, let's talk about how do you feel how her oust was handled behind closed doors?
Well, like I said
verbally.
Last week, she shouldn't become a martyr for this cause because remember, Liz Cheney is Liz Cheney. She's the daughter of Darth Vader Dick, and she did vote with Trump 97% of the time. So let's not forget that. Now, that aside, the way that they handled the vote, I think if you have the balls to sit and say that she should go, you should be able to stand and represent yourself and be like, I want my name on the record of being one of the people who I said I want her out. I mean, they should have done a roll call vote, that would have been fair. So she could at least see, who voted, what percentages. They took a yay and nay vote.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that doesn't really tell you whether or not people voted her out. That just tells you how loud people are.
Right.
When it comes down to the truth, right? It's like the louder people yell yay, the more yays are going to have it, right?
True.
So I think it was very cowardly. Kevin McCarthy, once again, proved that he is the spineless jellyfish of the GOP and that he should never, ever be in charge of Congress again. He should never be Speaker of the House again. I think that it riled up the base of Trump supporters, the Marjorie T. Greene fans, the Matt Gaetz fans, all those people.
We're getting to them. We're getting to them in a bit.
And the Elise Stefanik fans, I think they wanted somebody's head on a platter because Trump didn't win. They couldn't get Democrats, so they would suffice for people in their own party who didn't support. And they got their, half pound of flesh with Liz Cheney. And I think that they're just kind of right now, I think they've surrendered the party completely to her to Trump, because there are about 100 Republicans who are behind Liz Cheney after her ousting, and they're, like she said in the interview, committed to leading the charge to take back the party or form a new one or whatever, but they're not about this Trump mess.
Just a quick before Jill gets started, very interesting comment here by Cinnamon Canella, whom behind closed doors, that only happens in third world countries.
Well, welcome to the third world.
We do all of our caucus votes are done behind closed doors.
Yeah, they're a little bit messed up.
Yeah, on both sides. So
it's
even
bad.
when they do the Democratic,
there's no transparency, and it's really wrong.
Yeah, it's behind closed doors.
But they
the Democrats do it. They do roll call.
They do that in court as well. It's like when with ex parte communication and things that are off the record. You'd be surprised how many things a judge can just decide at random when it's going to be off the record or on the record. If you're like saying some craziness, you can get your transcripts back and go, I said such and such, and it won't even be there, which those things are really important on the record no matter what, should be on the record as my feeling, because people need to be able to look at the full context of a situation.
And just for the recording of history's sake and documentation,
Absolutely,
for the purposes of history, this is something that obviously is going to be a historic moment because it's getting so much news coverage. People are going to want to look back and say, well, who were those Congress people in the Republican caucus who thought Liz Cheney should go?
right.
You know, that would be something worth being able to look back at in the future.
American democracy at its
But
finest.
I actually feel that Liz and the other, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, even I was like, well, Dick Cheney's daughter, whatever. But here's the reality. Obviously, Dick Cheney's not well. If he were, we would have heard from him. We would have seen him. There's something up that's not the same. I think that's a no-go. Don't forget that Liz Cheney, you know, voted against her own sister. Essentially, her sister is a lesbian, and in same-sex marriage, Liz was like, I'm not down for that. But so, you know, karmically, things do come back to bite you in the butt. But I also think that the Mitt Romneys and Liz need to face the fact when Lauren Boebert, that horrible GED congresswoman, nothing wrong with getting a GED, but when it looks like she got it from the Sally, Dick, and Jane book club, I don't know if it's really all that great. But she needs to. Those Republicans need to accept the fact that it is a different party, and they are old dinosaurs in that party. It doesn't exist anymore, and it's never coming back. The reality is, these young people, the young millennials, seem to be cut from a very crazy cloth. I was wondering, was it because everybody did give them a trophy when they were running track or couldn't run, and you had a little lame looking little kid out there and you'd be like, hey, Tommy, that's so good. And you're like, come on, that's what you get for telling everybody they were fantastic. Because, and these are all rich people's kids. I mean, all of them are Ivy League educated, Democrats too. They're all rich people's kids. Their mind is on the money.
Harvard is giving out degrees.
Yeah, they do. Harvard's degrees are about as worthless as used toilet paper. I mean, it's pretty, like, you hear Harvard and you go, oh, another is going to come along, right? This is what's really, really crazy, is that party's gone. They want the old people out. None of them have any integrity. That old goat up in New Hampshire, the woman, Susan Collins, she's just barely hanging on to her tethers.
I haven't heard anything from her.
She was wobbling around the other day about
touching her pearls,
gargling on TV about how she tried to, you know, whatever it is. And the problem is that then you see that extreme of those, and their young people in their party have absolute zero respect for their elders. Zero. These are people who like the Elise Stefanik's, which we'll talk about later, but people need to really look back and go, wow, who raised these people? Because it's my generation that had kids like that. And the party's dead.
Let's go. So
it's a brand new type of arrogance, though. It really is in that part of the party. It's a very brand new type of arrogance. It's a combination of all the pill popping that their mothers did, all the Ritalin, all the giving the awards, and then you add technology 24/7, and it's just.
Okay, so Chris is saying this should have been a roll call vote if the Repubs truly stand by their albeit poor convictions. Strap on a pair, and do the vote the way it should be done. Jen is saying this burned my backside. Handled terribly. What a mess within that party.
Absolutely.
I was gonna ask about the status of the party, but we'll wait till the end of the next two conversations we're going to have, because then we can tie a bow on the status of what both of you think of the Republican Party. So then we mentioned the person taking over, Miss Stefanik. Do you have any comments about that young lady?
I only have one comment. I only have one really weird comment. Remember, in 2017, she, had put across this whole report that conservatives needed to embrace. They needed to embrace climate change, all these things, all of that. Whoever she was, that went out the window. But she's a Leo moon. Leo moons want power. They'll do anything for power. She's a ruthless person. But I don't think they'll be able to handle her, because if that's the only part where we see her big head explode and her flip-flopping and doing, an All About Eve performance for us, I think her demise is going to be equally as Oscar worthy.
Well, like I said, the first thing she needs to do is change her last name. Every time I hear her last name, I just think her breath smells really bad. But aside from that, she already said what she meant and what she's about when they interviewed her after she got the chair position. Is that, what is it? We're committed to being the party of Trump, or we're committed to supporting President Trump, who's not even a president anymore, to supporting him. And so, I mean, she said what she's about. Now, the party, here's the thing. When it was Kevin McCarthy and whoever else, and Cheney, Liz Cheney, there seemed to be some kind of push and pull in the leadership, something that could at least try and balance out the crazy. Now they've surrendered it to all the crazies, all the leadership. So you're going to see a whole bunch of crazy come out this party, particularly in their messaging, because one thing Kevin McCarthy wanted was them to be in line on messaging for a party of one. And that's going to happen. All their messages are going to be in line with Trumpism. And we're going to see how that's going to help them in elections in 2022.
They chose Trump over the truth. And it's really incredible to think that you're looking at the days of where people now consider themselves brands. And Stefanik will be like this to the day she dies, actually, because she's found her niche. She's found what she's going to make an entire life built upon. Personally, as a human being, I feel in my heart, and that I won't know it, none of us will know, I think she will be a very miserable human being. But she should always be denied power. But she will be in that party for a very long time and try to be the face of it and control of it, unless the patriarchy decides they're tired of her and decide how to get rid of her. Kevin McCarthy, I just don't feel is going to last, guys. I don't know how. I don't know if Californians, I don't know if we can take that. I don't know that that's going to his next go round, but that's in a few years. I think he's done after that.
Well, the other thing too is that should Trump win again, Elise Stefanik is going to be his pick for VP.
Yeah, she would be.
Okay, let's continue on. I'm just, all right. So Jen is saying, Aisha, you're exactly right in what you're saying. And let's move on to our next conversation piece. And I don't want to bring it up, but I have to. Majorie Taylor Greene's behavior.
Horrible. Somebody said they just didn't even want to talk about her because she, not to permit her to take up any space in your head. And on one hand, it really is like dealing with that bully at school that you try to ignore, and what she's done with AOC and her obsession with AOC. I really feel that Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, the thing is, Aisha and I were going back and forth online about, well, she didn't step to Cori Bush like this, but she tried it. The interesting thing is that all Marjorie Taylor Greene wants is a reaction from our squad girls and from everybody else to show them out, to get them on film, to get a response. And I have to applaud them all for not responding and taking the bait. But as a person who's voting for these people, my girls, Ilhan, AOC, and Presley and have Rashida. The whole thing for me and even Corey, I feel that women of color, and all women, need to stand up to Marjorie Taylor Greene, because we've all, whatever race we are, we've all encountered someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene, whether it's in the grocery store, the parking lot. I don't know, just we know those people, and they're actually like, she's got roid rage and she's so mannish. It's just, she's really like, I know that's just, I don't know what that energy is. It's just foul. It's foul.
Have either of you seen the little mini series on I can't remember, on Amazon Prime, Them?
No.
Okay, so granted, people have called it racial trauma porn, whatever, but there is this female character, this white female character, who's obsessed with this black family that just moved in across her block. She has no kids, and so she's like laser focused, obsessed on making their lives miserable. I mean, that's all she can think about. It's all consuming of her. That is, Marjorie Taylor Greene reminds me of that character,
Right?
because it's all consuming of her to just get a reaction from people and to just antagonize people to the point that somebody wants to slap her. Well, that woman in that miniseries, she said the N-word one too many times and got slapped across the face, and it shocked the hell out of her. Marjorie Taylor Greene is waiting for someone to pounce, and when it does, it's going to shock her. I mean, it's going to stun her, because she thinks everyone's afraid of her. No one's going to test her because she brandishes her guns, and nobody wants to get kicked out of Congress. Guess what? It's not going to be a person. Right. It's not going to be a person in Congress. It's going to be a person that won't mind spending a year or two in jail just for the gratification of having
I kind of feel that
out of her.
I think she's generating some kind of karma. You know, this is what she's putting out every day. So the return on this is you give what you get, and you get what you give.
Yeah, she should be expelled. She should have been expelled
a long time ago. But that's why Kevin McCarthy, I hope he knows, I hope he thinks she was worth it, because that is another reason. Watching those videos of her, chasing David Hogg, the kid, and then at AOC's door. I'm sorry, it's disgusting.
Okay, so since you mentioned that, so if people do not know what the incident is at AOC's door, as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's door, we're gonna show you this. This goes back to 2019, folks. So if you haven't seen this, you may not want to see this, but you're gonna see it anyways. Here we go. Okay.
He should look into Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene for her alleged verbal assault of Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in the halls of the U.S. Capitol complex. A since deleted Facebook Live post from 2019, preserved by CNN's K-File, shows this week's incident isn't actually the first time that Greene has targeted Ocasio-Cortez. Let's listen.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, I'm an American citizen. I pay your salary through the taxes that you collect from me through the IRS. I'm a woman, I'm a female business owner, and I'm proud to be an American woman. And I don't support your socialist policies. If you want to be a big girl, you need to get rid of your diaper and come out and be able to talk to the American citizens instead of us having to use a little flap.
It's kind of like hers. It's kind
sad.
Let's talk about this now.
And the guy who was with her was actually in the January 6th insurrection, by the way. That guy that is her on her team or whatever. Yeah, he was, I think, arrested for being in the insurrection. And you know what's really crazy? Yeah. So he was part of it. But I don't even know what to say anymore. I think I lost my train of thought.
The people in Marjorie Taylor's state, first of all, don't pay enough taxes to the federal government to even pay for AOC's salary. So she can just go ahead with that. Because 9 times out of 10, it came from one of the states Jill and I live in. Okay. It just, the whole, just It's the propaganda. It goes back to that belief I said earlier about these people think that so much of their taxes go towards this and towards that, and it really doesn't. But she just the
She's
wanting
an
to make
idiot.
the wanting to make a show of it. The fact that she doesn't even know that little part she shouldn't be near Congress, because
Right.
Congress holds the purse strings. Okay, and if you don't know the basic structure of it, why do you help make the laws that govern it? That
And
is
she,
absolutely ridiculous to me. But she just like I said, she just likes to antagonize and make a show of it. Obviously, she brought a film crew with her for the purpose of making a spectacle of herself.
she
And
tried it with Cori Bush as well with the film crew, remember? And Cori
and Corey stepped to her. I mean,
stepped to her hard on about it on footage. It was like, no, you're not going to do this.
All right. So here we go with comments. Ugh. That Chris is saying, ugh, that one. She seriously needs a decidedly involuntary psych evaluation.
She does.
Coupled with some serious psych meds, Ms. Taylor Greene, the true incarnation of Eleanor Rigby. Hashtag big ball of crazy. Big Black Beauty saying, I've read that Lady Speaker Nancy Pelosi is looking to bring some type of congressional action against her. I have heard that.
Good.
Yeah.
And then MTG should be removed from Congress, arrested, and oh no. I'm not going.
They might want to.
But as but you know what? What you said, T. Stevens, is probably exactly what Jill is thinking. So I will leave it.
Look, charge her with something in South Carolina. Aren't they bringing stoning back?
Yeah, right. They are.
Oh my goodness. Well, let's go to another one of the ladies' favorite young gentlemen. The feds are tightening their grip in the Matt Gaetz probe. Yes, his accomplice, his right-hand
Aisha's boy.
Now he's taking a plea bargain and he's charged with 6 counts of different things. So what's going on with Mr. Gaetz, Aisha?
But his friend was charged with 33 counts. He's pleading guilty he's pleading guilty to 6 on the contingency that he gives them information on some of these government officials, because if he doesn't come through, he'll get all 33 charges.
Right.
But he obviously has got some stuff on Matt Gaetz, because the reporting was that not just that Matt Gaetz had paid some 15 plus young ladies under the age of 17, but there was cocaine involved.
Let's hope he makes it through the weekend.
What do you feel the future of Gaetz is? What's his future?
Another cocaine high and DUI.
Do you think he'll make it through without any convictions?
No.
Oh, no.
I don't think so.
No, he's going down for something.
So is that the end of his political career?
Yeah. Well,
maybe not. If they want, Republicans seem to take.
They took Mark Sanford back.
And if you're dirty, they like dirty. They don't like clean. They don't like impeccable. They don't like. They like everybody to be sleeping in the same dirty sheets.
Yeah, I mean, remember, Mark Sanford took off from the state of South Carolina, even though he was governor. Didn't tell anybody. Didn't put the lieutenant governor in place. All to go to South America to have an affair with his mistress, while telling everybody he was hiking the Adirondacks or wherever, and came back and had to admit that he, had an affair with the love of his life. And, he went down in a ball of flames, but came back and was a congressman.
Yeah, I don't think that you can be clean and be a Republican anymore. I don't think that. I think that's just not possible.
They're the party of second chances.
That party is done. You have people that blatantly lie, and it is a new party, guys. We're talking about an old party from the 1950s, 60s, family values, blah, 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 blah. That doesn't exist. So yeah, they would take Matt Gaetz back.
Democrats are the exact opposite, because Anthony Weiner's never coming back.
No.
True.
Ever. Okay. You can barely get Al Franco back.
Right.
That is true. Good point.
Yeah.
Good point. Very good point. Very good point. Well, folks, we end off every episode with the cockroach, and this one is a classic. Representative Andrew Clyde this week, during this hearings about the insurrection, said 1 out of the 6 people that were involved were tourists visiting the Capitol building.
See?
He said if you look at the footage, you see tourists visiting the Capitol. And I love the fact that like Joy Reid and Nicole Wallace showed his comments side by side with the footage of people, so you could actually
it was great. That was the best.
That was the best part, was when people were like visiting, tourists. I mean, first of all, what is your definition of tourist? I mean, is your definition that is it just people who came from across the country to ascend on one spot, is one destination? Is that your definition of tourist? Well, if that's your definition, then you're right. That would be, tourist. But the fact that I don't know. I guess it's like he's conflating the people that Majorie Taylor Greene and Boebert were giving tours to just before the insurrection with the people who were actually using the information gathered in those tours on January 6th.
He basically...
Oh boy, I don't know if I want to hear this.
No, you're fine. I told you guys earlier, I was so upset and outraged that I literally called his office and Andy Bigg's office, who did the same thing. And it just felt right to just talk to their people and say, that guy is an idiot and he is not fit to serve. And I'm sorry, you have to work for him. Because if I said they are not men of their words. See, this is when the value system is so off that being a man of your word, I mean, wow, these are like anomalies to say, I want to be a person of my word. Not them. They're okay with blatantly lying. And it is like Congress has become such a circus that I am petitioning, please hire Sandman from the Apollo and put, I swear to God, when there is another committee hearing, I want to see an umbrella come out and just yank them right off. Like that was a yankable moment.
Yes.
It just should have been like, if
somebody should have silenced his mic.
Yeah, right? And actually everybody in the room should have all looked at each other and busted up laughing. And just like, because I don't believe this whole thing, like, don't shame. No, shaming had a purpose, guys. Shaming had a purpose in Japan. When people committed crimes, the whole family was shamed for generations. When, shaming was not all bad. Shame is an important element. It's an important thing that needs to be in your society, used properly. It can create a conscience.
But this is, again, yet another moment of the Republicans trying to get in bed with white supremacists and be the party of white supremacy, because had it been a group of black people,
their toe,
they would never have called it a tourist visit. They would have referred to it as a riot, as an overthrow of government, as terrorist action, called Black Lives Matter terrorists like they always do. But they are trying to, now that this is a predominantly white bunch of people who did something really, really bad, really, really shameful, and tried to overthrow the government, they're trying to find ways of minimizing it. So terrorist is the most outrageously minimal term that they've been called thus far. I mean,
the one thing that should be presented more is that one oath keeper who wrote a letter and he has said, I was misled down a road, my friends and myself, and basically by Trump, and we are all going to go to jail. like basically called him out. And I'm not saying he's a martyr either. He's just trying to save his ass. But the reality is that some reality set in on him, like, you were misled, you cuckoo bird, you were like Cocoa for, Cocoa
like
Puffs. It's like, where
Trump
were
didn't
you?
even give him a pardon. He said Trump promised to take care of people's bills,
and
promised
he
to make
didn't.
sure that people wouldn't get arrested, and he didn't. And then he was upset about the people that Trump pardoned, because he didn't pardon any of these insurrectionists who had been arrested.
No.
And that should be a wake-up moment to all those people who were involved in that. Is that
it was important that he wrote that.
He left you all to hang out and dry, and then asked you for money for the privilege of doing so.
But then DeSantis has now said he's not going to hold anybody accountable for, I guess, the pandemic crimes. But let's also note that if he had any people who were arrested during that, he's not going to want them punished. But he has no say over federal stuff, dealing with. So we have a big problem with DeSantis, because let's not forget that Trump, the extradition of anybody possibly getting indicted from one state back to New York, we can all bet that DeSantis will not allow Trump to go there, and maybe even Christie, and he's right next door to New York. Either way, it's been New Jersey or Florida. But let's see if Trump can live his whole life living in those two places, because when he gets up in the sky on a plane, they can bring the plane down and arrest him.
But remember, Christie's not governor of Jersey anymore.
Oh yeah, that's right. He's not. Yes, that's right. I forgot. Yeah. So yeah, we're up to some things.
So Chris is asking, the Repubs would probably welcome Gaetz even as a convicted hophead and child molester. Sickening.
Yeah.
Cinema Canella says tourist.
Yeah.
Cinema Canella says armed tourists.
Yeah.
Jen says,
right?
Tourists, what? WTH?
Yeah.
Chris says, Price, cockroach, Clyde, deluded moron. Of course, a gun store owner, and just saying he came from Canada. Just saying. Surely he's off his meds.
He couldn't afford him once he got here.
So I was going to ask the state of the Republican Party, but you basically cover that all through for the last number of minutes. Here's a question that just came to my alleged mind. What will Republicans say was a bigger threat to the country, 9/11 or January 6th?
9/11.
9/11.
And what do you say was a bigger threat to the country?
January 6th.
January 6th.
They tried to overthrow our democracy. 9/11 was an attack that came upon us, but this is something that came from inside.
Yeah, it was an inside job. Talk about inside. And they were prepared to run with it had it worked. And that's what's scary, because who knows where we would all be at this point. We may not even be talking to you.
Just because those are the two in our lifetime. Our lives have been the two biggest threats to, I'll say, quote, American democracy, unquote.
Yeah.
And I would find it very interesting to ask every member in the Senate and the House that question.
Well, here's the thing about American democracy. And when you think of what the people who initially wrote all of our Constitution and Bill of Rights and everything, our democracy is such that it cannot be destroyed from outside. It'll be destroyed from inside.
From inside.
It's when the people here decide that democracy does not work for us. And it's not going to be because those who've been oppressed have said it doesn't work for us. It's going to be because those who have privilege say that it's not working only for us.
Right.
So we've got to demolish it. And that's where we are right now.
Interesting. Black Beauty says this. January 6, 21 is still a threat to America.
True.
Because they can do it again. Think about it. They've only arrested about 500 of the tens of thousands of people that were there. So you've got those people still sitting and waiting for their next command. Donald Trump's problem has just been that every fake Twitter account he's tried to come up with, Twitter keeps shutting down. He has no mass social media.
He doesn't have a distribution
potential,
list. He
right.
doesn't have a big
His
distribution
his
list.
website's not doing well, so he doesn't have that mass audience to give one message to unless he goes on TV.
True.
And at that point on TV, the news people can kind of control it. They can shift the direction of it, or they can shut it down. On Twitter, he had free reign to say whatever it was he said, unfiltered, and they did nothing to curb it until after the insurrection. And that tells you how bad that was.
Wow. Well, that's another epic conversation. I knew it was going to be fired tonight. It was fired tonight. And before we get the ladies to give their contact information, want to thank Black Beauty, Chris, Jen, Cinema Canella, T. Stevens, Chris, I think I said already, and there's some Christina, others who watched tonight. We want to thank you because you helped make this conversation epic. It was fantastic. Chris is saying, terrific trio. Have a great week and thank you. All the best to you all.
Chris.
God bless. And Chris, I did read the email that you sent to both the ladies, and they were very touched by your words.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jen saying, great conversation all. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you, Jen.
Hopefully one day one of you two will come on the conversation. Black Beauty says, per Malcolm Nance, the threat to our democracy is still at risk. It is their intention to overthrow our democracy via the Republican Party that refuses to work with President Biden.
True.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Wow. This is wild. All right, folks. You know what we do here? We do roll call at the end and say thank you for all the great comments. I'm just going to take this one down, and then what we're going to do is close out. So take it down. So first things first, Jill Jones is in the house.
It's gotten dark here. I'm sitting in the dark.
Yeah, what's happening there?
I don't know. I'm just flat here in the dark, but I'm at Jill D. Jones.
There you go,
Twitter.
on Twitter.
Yeah.
All right. And Aisha K?
At Aisha Staggers on Twitter.
Wonderful. As usual, we want to thank the ladies and say, I am Dr. Vibe, the host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show, the home of Epic Conversations, and I'm the host of Epic Conversations, 2020 Best Podcast News Award winner, 2018 Innovation Award winner given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. And I also host the only online show in the world for fathers and men that is sponsored by Dove Men Care and co-sponsored by DAD, Central Canada's National Fatherhood Organization. And I also am the board chair for the Global Food and Drink Initiative, which is a multimedia not-for-profit that showcases Blacks in the diaspora that are involved in food, wine, and travel. And I think that's all. That's all I'm saying. Okay, well, look, I said thank you to everybody. If you want to find out all about me, it's on the screen. The DRVIBESHOW.com. All my social media is there. All the great replays of the epic conversations that Jill and Aisha have done are all there. And all other stuff you want to get in contact with me, there's contact form right on the site. I always like to close with this. Live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get small to get stronger. Block assumptions, then aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. God bless. Peace to well. Keep the faith. Love, faith, and respect. And remember to give yourselves grace. And we'll see you next week. And stay safe. Goodbye, everybody.